Thanks to all the subscribers. Please like, subscribe, and comment. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Many have made their fortunes in the booming business of computers and information technology, but no one, authorities say, did it quite like ERICK BOZEMAN. ERICK BOZEMAN was born and raised in South Central California. The government accused Mr. BOZEMAN of masterminding an operation that shipped cocaine inside of hollowed-out computers throughout the United States, as well as laundering money through shell corporations. The federal indictment alleges that he covered over 10 major black cities including Memphis, Tennessee, Jackson, Mississippi, Baltimore, Maryland, District of Columbia, Detroit, Michigan, Chicago, Illinois, and Cleveland, Ohio, crossing state lines coast to coast simultaneously. Records showed that BOZEMAN maintained multiple residences from the east side of Manhattan to Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, Buckhead in Atlanta, and Miami's South Beach, just to name a few. He changed addresses and identities with ease. When asked where he lived, an official once stated, "He lived wherever he felt like living." Authorities allege that BOZEMAN, operating under many aliases and shell corporations in the Cayman Islands and other exotic locales, had made more than $30 million during his 2 years in operation by running a ring that hollowed out computers, filled them with cocaine, and shipped them nationwide for sale. BOZEMAN, they say, was living the high life, buying a $680,000 house in Leona Valley 7 miles west of Palmdale with laundered drug proceeds, and spending $150,000 a month on travel, restaurants, business expenses, and perks for his many associates until the time of his arrest. BOZEMAN was arrested while staying at a downtown Los Angeles hotel, trying to hide from the FBI after many of his alleged associates had been caught, prosecutors said. "It was 3 blocks from the courthouse, which we found kind of funny," said Janice Gordon, an Atlanta-based assistant U.S. attorney who is leading the multi-state effort to prosecute BOZEMAN and his alleged associates. BOZEMAN and 20 others were indicted July 19 by a federal grand jury in Atlanta, and there are 2 related cases, a Los Angeles indictment involving alleged money launderers affiliated with the group, and a New York City case that fingers alleged lower-level drug dealers. According to the indictment, BOZEMAN, also known as Jason Mitchell, Eric Powell, Buddy Jones, and Mr. Harris, masterminded a drug ring that sold more than 2,000 pounds of cocaine, racking up at least $30 million in profits since 1992, then laundering it through more than a dozen offshore bank accounts. Authorities stated BOZEMAN will be shipped back to Atlanta for prosecution, where he could be sentenced to a mandatory life prison term if convicted under the federal government's so-called drug kingpin statute. His trial, authorities have hinted in interviews and court documents, will shed light on the shadowy world of a jovial criminal genius. BOZEMAN blurred the line between white-collar crime and drug dealing as effectively as anyone ever caught by federal authorities, said Kent B. Alexander, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. More than half of BOZEMAN's 50 co-defendants made plea agreements with prosecutors. Mr. BOZEMAN, on the other hand, made a contrarily maneuver that no one expected. He became his own lawyer and represented himself in federal court, facing multiple counts of conspiracy and money laundering and the main count, an 848 kingpin charge, at the Atlanta federal courthouse, along with 2 of his Chicago and D.C. co-defendants. The case started when federal agents in Los Angeles suggested the FBI in Atlanta investigate an alleged co-conspirator who apparently failed to heed her own advice on a to-do list she wrote. The note, one of many incriminating documents authorities say they found in the woman's trash, said, "Get paper shredder." Apparently she never did. FBI agents testified in an Atlanta federal court that in going through the woman's garbage, they found detailed computer printouts of drugs allegedly bought and sold by the organization, including prices, customer lists, and destinations. From there, they say, they began tracking BOZEMAN on his trips around the country and overseas, tapping phones and compiling enough evidence to put him away for life. Authorities allege that BOZEMAN used Los Angeles and Atlanta as hubs of a criminal enterprise that had all the trappings of a major corporation. They allege that spreadsheets, payrolls, fax machines, computer email networks, and other sophisticated means were used to coordinate a drug business that pulled in millions of dollars while employing dozens of associates selling cocaine in Los Angeles, New York, and many cities in between. It is one of the largest cases we have ever prosecuted, and one of the most sophisticated, Alexander said. They were not operating out of a file cabinet in an apartment room. It was big business. Cornell Price, a lawyer representing BOZEMAN, said, "The indictment reflects a significant amount of cocaine trafficking, at least allegations of it, but proving it is another matter. The allegations don't sound good. The grand jury has concluded there is some smoke, but I haven't seen what the grand jury has seen, said Price, who added that his client won't enter a plea until he gets to Atlanta. He described the then 31-year-old Bozeman as an articulate, intelligent man, stocky and well-built, with a ready smile and an eye for detail. He's got a very sharp, very quick mind, Price said. He falls into the smart person category. Prosecutors said Bozeman floated from one place to another and spent a lot of time in Los Angeles, although authorities would not say whether the Leona Valley house was a base of operations for the organization. At one place where he was staying, authorities said they found 107 pounds of cocaine. He lived wherever he felt like living, one official said. Although some of his alleged associates went by names such as Blue and Rock, authorities said Bozeman was not involved in gangs. He's too high class, said one, adding that Bozeman was frequently heard on wiretaps saying, "I don't do retail." Bozeman was initially held without bail in the Federal Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles. Authorities say that because of all his aliases, at least 8 they are aware of, Bozeman is a flight risk. The other defendants were arrested before he was, and I'm surprised that Mr. Bozeman didn't leave the country, Alexander said, but I'm glad that he will be making an appearance in court in Atlanta. In the meantime, authorities are moving to seize the Leona Valley property, 4 Georgia properties, 19 bank accounts, and $30 million in currency. In a 63-page indictment and in testimony before an Atlanta federal judge, Gordon and an FBI agent said authorities had gathered vast amounts of evidence against Bozeman and his many alleged co-conspirators through the use of phone wiretap surveillance and computer records, including those found in the discarded garbage. "We are dealing with hundreds and hundreds of kilograms of cocaine," Gordon told U.S. Magistrate Joel Feldman. "This is a very strong case. Each of these defendants has been wiretapped directly discussing procedures and transfers of money and, on occasion, drugs within the Bozeman organization." FBI Special Agent Bill Lewis detailed how wiretaps caught Bozeman personally calling drug sources in Cali, Colombia, and placing orders for up to 300 pounds of pure cocaine at a time. Once the cocaine made its way to Bozeman, authorities and court documents allege it was packaged into the innards of computers and shipped out to various destinations in huge, bulky packages bearing innocuous corporate logos. FBI agents waiting outside one location last November watched as the computer boxes were taken inside, then dumped outside after being emptied. The boxes were then sent to the FBI crime lab near Washington, where trace amounts of cocaine were found, authorities said. Later, several similar computers were seized at an Atlanta airport, authorities said. The cocaine would be split up and sold, and drug money would be transferred out of the country to the Cayman Islands, the Bahamas, and Antigua, laundered and shipped or carried back to Bozeman and his lieutenants, court documents and authorities allege. According to some records obtained from the trash, the organization's Atlanta operation made about $1 million between May 10 and July 27, 1993, and spent well over $500,000 on administrative and office expenses including cellular phones, pagers, salaries and family support, the indictment reads. When FBI agents began following Bozeman around the country and listening to his cellular phone conversations, authorities said they learned a lot about his many girlfriends. He has several children but no current wife, they believe, and his taste for the good life. On one conversation, authorities allege, Bozeman boasted of winning $50,000 on one of his many trips to Las Vegas. They also learned more than they really wanted to about his trip to a ritzy Hawaiian resort. "It was so expensive we freaked out when we heard," said one official familiar with the case. "It was unbelievably expensive. It would be a lifetime before we could spend that much money. It is one of the largest cases we have ever prosecuted and one of the most sophisticated," said Ken Alexander, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. They were not operating out of a file cabinet in an apartment room. It was big business. Here are some excerpts from Eric Bozeman's opening argument while fighting for his life representing himself in federal court. Eric Bozeman. "I'm sorry to inform you that you are all participants in a game by the government. I intend to expose that. I will not pretend to be Johnny Cochran or F. Lee Bailey in these proceedings. However, I come with the voice of reason and sound logic. The war on drugs, ha ha ha. This war has taken on many forms in America, many forms and many faces. It has existed in one way or another since African prisoners arrived in 1619 as slaves. It was showing different faces of that war that said slavery was legal. It showed different faces of that war that codified Jim Crow into law. institutionalized apartheid. It was showing different faces of that war that condoned lynching and made it socially acceptable. Miss Gordon, Your Honor, I am going to object. Race has nothing to do with this case. He's supposed to talk about the evidence. ERICK BOZEMAN. I want you to be aware of the fact the law is engaging in what's called undercover entrapment, breaking the law in order to catch lawbreakers. The evidence in this case will show that right and wrong are of no major importance to the government. The evidence will show that no matter what crime you commit, if you plea bargain and work for the government, your crimes will be forgiven. The evidence will show that government witnesses are hostages of the government. Because I refused to accept a plea, I refused to work for the government when I was first arrested in Los Angeles. I am now a hostage. The evidence will show that they offered me a job, they said. Mr. Bozeman, you are a young man, your whole life is ahead of you. Will you accept a plea, work for us, inform, lock up everybody that you know? In other words, they call that being a snitch. I call it selling your soul. So, in other words, I was told if I sell my soul that I would be turned loose. You know, it would be a slap in the face and an insult to all of your intelligence for me to stand here and tell you that I had nothing to do with these activities, but I'm not going to say that, or that I received no profit. The evidence will show that I was born in the urban war zone of South Central Los Angeles, where the real law is money and survival. I was a broker just like Michael Milken and Ivan Boesky, except I don't have $6 million to pay a fine to the government and go home in 3 years, or just go totally unpunished like the people who ran the savings and loans in America, for which every taxpayer is paying. I am not a drug dealer, I am not a kingpin. In closing I say, do you remember, when Ali was a champ, his matches had names, the Thriller in Manila, the Rumble in the Jungle. But I entitle this trial, We the People Don't Believe the Hype. Thank you. ERICK BOZEMAN was ultimately convicted and went on to survive 27 years buried under a life sentence for drugs. He survived 9,855 days. He was released with help and representation from the Buried Alive Project. What do you think? Comment below. And as always, although there are convictions in this matter, I must stress that an indictment is not evidence of guilt. Charges are only allegations, and each defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Blessings. Luke 17:3-4. If your brother sins, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him.